Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Index. This is another episode of our sub show called Everything SVM. I'm your host, Alex Kehaya. My co-host, Omar Zaki from Mantis, who supports the show, couldn't make it today. But thank you to Omar and his team for continuing to support the show. Today, we've got Andres Monte, co-founder and CEO of Range, which is a blockchain security intelligence platform. I'm really excited to have you here today, and I think it's pretty timely because of the recent hacks that we've seen. And if you've been in crypto long enough, chances are you probably have been hacked or lost money on a centralized exchange, right? Something happened to you of that nature. So it's a really important topic. And yeah, before we get into like Range specifically, just would you mind introducing yourself and kind of just talking about like why you're here, why you're in the industry, what got you started?
Yeah, hi Alex. First, thanks for having me here. As you said, I'm Andres Monte. I'm co-founder and CEO at Range. And Range is a blockchain security and intelligence company. I guess really coming back to the origins, to the very origins, I've been always a very high curiosity person. And I was kind of in between before going to uni, in between sort of like going through the philosophy, history route or like maths and science and physics, right? Which is both things that I really liked, right? And I ended up going to study physics and I kind of went for physics, but just to really learn a lot about physics. But from the first day at uni, I knew that after physics, I would never gonna be a physicist, right? I wanted to work in finance, sort of like a HFT, something like that. But I guess in my third year of uni, like I kind of got crossed with sort of like Bitcoin white paper, right? And that changed the plans a lot. It was not the first time I had seen sort of like the white paper, but it's kind of something that you need to sort of be ready for it. And that time I really sort of struck to me, and I just went to the rabbit hole. So I got super interested in the tech. I got super interested in smart contracts. So I started reading the Bitcoin Talks forum, started reading a lot about Nick Szabo, which is kind of like the inventor of smart contracts and has this amazing blog. And yeah, at the end, I wanted to learn more and more and ended up doing a master's in computer science, specializing in cryptography, distributed systems, and security. I went to do this at Edinburgh. I had Edinburgh in Scotland that had this amazing research lab focused on blockchain research. I published a couple of papers there, and then I went to work for a London company. They were doing enterprise blockchains, and this was in 2018, which is what a lot of people were doing back then. And back then, I was sort of a research engineer, and I focused a lot on consensus algorithms. And consensus algorithms like BFT. So basically what we were doing there was trying to bring fast finality to Geth. Back in 2018, there was sort of like Ethereum was POW. There was not sort of fast finality. And basically we did like a massive market research and try to understand how can we bring a consensus algorithm that has these sort of finality properties. And we ended up going with Tendermint, which was sort of it still is in a way, sort of a state-of-the-art BFT consensus algorithm. And architecture-wise, we did probably like the opposite to Ethmos, right? So instead of bringing the AVM into the Cosmos stack, we basically brought Tendermint, sort of like the consensus protocol, kind of is the infra, so the consensus layer, into the Geth client in Ethereum. And basically, that's sort of how that led me to the Cosmos ecosystem. That led me to, start doing audits. And that's kind of a bit the origin of how I started Range with Michael.
Oh, interesting. So you guys were experimenting with this cross-pollination between Cosmos and the Ethereum virtual machine. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because there's a team, the Soon SVM team. I don't know if you've seen Soon, but they're doing something similar, but, where they're bringing like SVM not into the client, but, you can have like an EVM compatible chain on top kind of, right? Like they're bringing that same capability. It's like a similar idea.
It was a broad idea, I would say, because back then, like sort of like this sort of whole idea of sort of the execution layer, the consensus layer was not as developed as it is right now, and was more of a, okay, we have Geth, the Ethereum client, the Go Ethereum client. How do we bring it with a fast finality algorithm? So it was more of a really proto version of what folks like Zoom are doing today.
Well, it's kind of funny. I was just like thinking about how history repeats itself, right? Like that was happening with Cosmos and EVM, and now it's SVM and EVM. You know, it's kind of like it's definitely. I've seen a lot of a bunch of different teams that are trying to solve a similar problem. So you kind of like started getting asked to do audits. It sounds like though, like you were working on this. People got to know you in the IBC community, and they were like, "Hey, could you do this security audit?" That's kind of how the security piece started, or what kind of led you down the path of doing a security company versus it sounds like you were trying to build like your own blockchain.
No, but this was sort of like my first stint in the blockchain space. I was there 2018 for 1 year and a half. And then I joined a venture studio, crypto venture studio that was incubating, like projects, protocols in Ethereum and also like in the Cosmos ecosystem, right? And this was kind of like at the very beginning of sort of like Cosmos Wasm and Cosmos. And I started to get quite good with sort of like the tech stack, and I started doing freelance audits in the weekends, right? And my background, like my master's, I had to specialize in security, so that's always something that was very close to my expertise. But kind of I started very lightly, and then I think I became quite good at it. Became super deep, just doing sort of audits with sort of like Rust smart contracts and Cosmos chains. And this was, I think, like around 2021, 2022. And like I also started to do like a lot of sort of bug bounties, searching bug bounties, finding bug bounties in live protocols. I earned like a couple of critical vulnerabilities there. And basically around that time, this was 2022, and it feels yesterday in a way, but it also sort of like ages ago. And basically in 2022, it was when Terra collapsed. This was one sort of like of the whole FTX debacle. But there were two things that were very important that year, I guess, for me as an auditor and security person. One was the Ronin Bridge hack. This was a hack that was...
I remember that.
I mean, it was crazy, right? It was like, I think like $600 million, which was back then the largest hack in the history of crypto. And I guess the hack itself was sort of like in the bridge connecting the Ethereum mainnet and the sort of Axie sidechain L1. But the craziest stuff about this hack, it was not the amount, which is crazy enough, but is that the team itself, the team from Axie, didn't know that this had happened until 6 days after the fact. So, picture this as, imagine that you have like, you have a bank branch, or you
like, how do you not know? How do you just lose $600 million for a week? Let's call it a week. I'm rounding up on that. One. It's a week.
It's nuts, right? And it's not about pointing fingers. It's because like, not them, but nobody in the ecosystem realized that, right? And this is like you operate like an auto dealer, and you get stole like, I don't know, 70% of your inventory, and you go to the office every day and you don't realize, right? So that was sort of like a wake up moment for us. I was like, doing audits, it's great, it's fun, like you help projects, but it's very sort of incremental. Like it's like man hours. You do an audit, you have 8 hours, 10 hours per day, and you can dedicate to that. But we kind of felt that the industry foundations at the sort of the security and trust level needed sort of like more sort of like a infrastructure and products, and audits were not enough. And something similar happened to Osmosis. I mean, they got hacked for $4 million, so way less than Axie, but it was something similar in the sense that the team, the Osmosis team, which is one of the best, from my point of view, best teams in the industry, super technical team, only realized that their protocol was being exploited through Reddit, because people were talking Reddit, hey, if you call this function, you can twitch your money. This was 2022, right? I think we've come a long way, and basically talking with Osmosis, because we had this purchase in Cosmos, as I was doing audits there, we kind of said with them, hey, let's build this sort of monitoring system for Cosmos WASM in Osmosis. And this is sort of like the real genesis of what Range is today. That has changed a lot, but that was kind of like the first seed.
Yeah, so your main product is this monitoring tool.
This was back then. Right now, like I would say Range is a way more sort of like versatile and broad platform, right? So we have, we have teams being like DeFi teams, being like teams that interact with whole crypto foundations, sort of like both build and use the centralized protocols, hold assets with peace of mind. And that means, like helping them with sort of security, sort of like threat detection monitoring, helping them with compliance as well, sort of like address screening, cross-chain, wallet monitoring, and also with sort of like what we call is intelligence, which is giving them insights that can help them make their project safer, but also better. Like, for example, understanding their users, understanding how these systems behave, basically.
Super cool. It's quite the journey too, from where you started. So what's the state, like, what's the state of the company now? Do you work in just Cosmos and Solana and EVM, or do you work across all networks? Like how much reach do you have?
Yeah. So we, after focusing in Cosmos, like after Osmosis, I'm working with some of the leading teams in the Cosmos ecosystem, like DYDX, Celestia, Cosmos Hub, and others. We kind of realized, and this was easy coming from the Cosmos ecosystem, which every sort of application is its own chain, that cross-chain, so the activity that happens between systems is as important, if not more important, than what happens within chains, and that was very opaque to the community, to the teams. So that became sort of like this cross-chain analytics monitoring, like a big focus for us. And then, we work, for example, with Circle, creating sort of like this Explorer for CCTP and monitoring system that is used every day by teams like DYDX. But also another focus was Rust ecosystems, right? Cosmos WASM, which is where we started, is sort of like a Rust environment for compared to Cosmos to WASM for smart contracts, and we think that Rust is probably the best tool for the job. Some people might argue for Move, but we think that sort of Rust, it was like has like a great sort of like Web2 developer ecosystem, but also brings and attracts the right developers and the right developer mindset. So we made this one of our North Stars, and that's why sort of Solana, we expanded to Solana with the Solana Foundation and became such an important part of Range, and is the main place where people build Rust applications in crypto today, right? So yeah. I guess that these are our two focus, sort of Rust-based ecosystems, and then the cross-chain interactions between any chain and any role.
So how do you work on teams on Solana who are obviously mostly building Rust applications? Like, how do you work with them? What does that look like?
Yeah, so at Range, we mostly work with at two different levels. One is sort of like at the ecosystem level. So we work with the L1s, with the foundations. And in this case, we work very closely with the Solana Foundation, that they gave us a grant to help sort of with ecosystem level monitoring, right? And that means a few things. It means sort of kind of like a top level understanding of what happens in Solana, that maybe we can come later on, sort of like the historical issues of the read layer of Solana, and also means helping not just the biggest teams with more resources, but also the long tail of teams that are just getting started, that maybe after a hackathon, but they have real assets in the blockchain, right? And how can we help these teams? And basically, we help these teams, both big and small, with, we kind of divide our offering between sort of transactions, assets, and users, right? So, for example, for transactions, we have this transaction security and simulation service that, probably if you're running like a Solana protocol, probably you've used it, even if you don't know it, because like it's literally run every time you do like a multi-sig transaction with the squads, right? And yeah, 99% of the Solana teams operate a Solana a squads multi-sig, right? And then
I'm a heavy squads user. So
yeah, huge fan. And yeah, we have them sort of monitoring their multi-sig and then monitoring as well some specific events that might happen to your protocol, right? When you upgrade your protocol, when you receive funds, when there is anomalies. So we help them sort of set up this monitoring system and then also track what happens around it, what kind of addresses are interacting with it, and so on.
Very cool. You mentioned something about the read layer. What challenges have you found with the read layer of Solana, and like what are some of the solutions? It sounds like you have a solution to that, or the historical read. Do you mean archive when you talk about historical, or
yeah, both? Like, I mean, we have, I guess, a good solution. We also had like a lot of challenges, right? Like in the last 18 months, we've been fighting with the stack in a way. Like Solana has, like a lot of great things, a lot of great architectural decisions, but there are certain things that are harder to do in Solana, right? And to build an intelligence security platform like Range, we operate with a lot of data and at two levels. One is sort of like real-time data, which basically we need to ingest every transaction that happens in Solana, understand it and apply it to our models, our sort of like graph payment models and so on. And there is just a challenge in terms of the information throughput and amount of activity and amount of things that happen in Solana. This is sort of just a challenge. And then the other is the historical one, right? So if we want to understand what an address did, in the whole history, to understand, for example, where funds are coming from. If you're building an enterprise focused application, you need to understand the source of funds, for example, of your users, right? And this is quite hard to do with Solana. You need to go all over into Genesis. You need to recompose the state. Some accounts might be closed. You need to sort of like reconstruct part of the state. So yeah, that's in itself a challenge as well. And then the other thing is sort of what a lot of people historically in the community have complained. I think right now is way better, but sort of like the challenge is understanding explorers. And this is not because explorers in Solana are worse. It's just that you need to go one step beyond to understand sort of like the account model, how things are interacting with each other. And that's something that, for example, to understand all the payments that an address or a program have done, like we have gone like very, very deep in this direction as well.
Interesting. Look, I have a lot of questions, but one is on the read layer front. Are you running your own infra? Or are you working with RPC companies? Like, how are you handling that?
We do both. We have like one node that we run ourselves. We also contract with sort of RPC as a service. We have like our own dedicated node, so guys for stream, similar to our own setup, but we just need this for both redundancy and also like to verify that either them or us, don't miss things. And then we have as well external APIs to do some verification. So we kind of ingest data in real time from many different places. And then we try to reconcile everything together to maximize the data integrity, both the recent one and also the historical one.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's interesting. And I have some ideas for you for after the show for that. But on the in understanding the data front with the Explorer, have you guys explored using AI to help you accelerate your understanding of the data? Can you do that? Like, is that a useful way to leverage AI in Solana, is for that better understanding that information?
Yeah, I mean, we do use sort of like machine learning and AI in many different places of our pipeline, meaning with pipeline, the moment that a new sign-up, let's say a new event, a new transaction comes into sort of what we call the range engine, and we do use it. it's a combination of things. Like you need to do certain things with sort of just pure heuristics. Like for example, for the transaction simulation, right? Like we worked very closely with the squads to understand all the state changes that were relevant for any user of a multisig, right? And this is pure sort of kind of checklist, heuristic level. Let's understand all the state changes that we want to sort of like show to the user very clearly. And this is both for UX and security purposes, right? Like, for example, delegations, permits, of course, balance changes and things like that. So you need to combine this with the more sort of like big data, machine learning, AI methods, and hopefully kind of put this together to make the most of the information for the end user, being this an end user or a developer.
So one thing that I think is interesting here too, and that we've been exploring is there's a lot of different attack vectors, right? And the transaction screening is one of them, right? And that's kind of what happened with the Bybit hack a couple of weeks ago. Was I think it was right, like the North Koreans hacked the dev server of Genosis Safe, and were able to alter the transaction. Is that something you guys is that what happened? I mean, can you explain to me what happened? And is that something your service could have helped prevent?
Yeah, I mean, the Bybit hack, which I think should be a wake-up call to the industry on many different levels. So what it happened was like a hack with a Web 2 security root cause. So basically, DPRK was able to compromise a developer machine, right? So a developer machine, and this developer had sort of like deployment keys, deployment rights for the safe frontend. So basically what they did was kind of compromising this developer machine, and then deployed a rogue version of the safe app frontend. So when Bybit was seeing it, like in the frontend, in their desktops, for example, they would see something different to what they were actually going to sign, right? So I think there are many lessons. Like I guess that the first two is that we need to improve as an industry, sort of like the wallet security and the sort of signing UX. Like this happened because like Ethereum like has sort of this blind signing method where when you are using your hardware wallet, you don't see exactly, you just see sort of blind, this is a blind signature, and you don't see what you are signing. So like if, like DPRK were able to sort of fool the front end, this is kind of like the source of truth. That's one thing. And then the second thing is sort of like the whole operational security conversation, right? This is nothing new. Like in 2024 already. So last year, I think like 70% of the stolen funds in crypto had like an origin, sort of like a key compromise or sort of like a Web 2 vector, right? So I think in 2025 with this big hack, this is $1.5 billion. This is probably, hopefully, going to be the leading factor. Like, yeah, that's in wood here.
Yeah.
So we need to sort of, I guess, improve on the sort of operational security front. This could mean as well that we've gotten better as an industry securing sort of smart contracts and protocols. Who knows? Maybe it says that we kind of have gotten better respectively to sort of like our operational security standards. But we need to kind of take the same sort of security standards as people operate in banks, right? If your protocol holds like $5 million, 50, 500, 5 billion, right? Like you need to be consequent to the amount of money that you are holding between sort of 5 ledgers across the world, right? Like we need to really up the game and really own it. And yeah, like that's, I think, like the two biggest takeaways. And then I have, I guess, a couple of questions. And these are a bit more meta, I would say, or like, would love as well, like your take here. And is the first one, and this kind of is quite close to what we do at Range, and is that how on earth, even if, your developer is compromised, the UI is compromised, how on earth you can move $1.5 billion in one transaction, right?
Yeah.
What, there's not that time lock. why there is not a guardrail saying, hey, if you want to move more than $10 million, let's put this in these two different lanes and we think about it, right?
Yeah, this should be like Fort Knox level security. Like you like have two, it's like nuclear, it's like firing a nuke, you gotta like 5 people to like turn the keys in the same room.
Yeah.
People walking around with the briefcases that are locked to their wrist with a cuff that are chained to the wrist, kind of scenario, when you're talking about like 1.5 billion in customer funds.
The thing is that $1.5 billion is, I think, very hard to reason about, just because of the amount of money that is. But like I'm originally from Spain, and I think this represents sort of like a meaningful amount of our defense budget, like per year, right? And this may indicate that our defense budget is not high enough. Yeah,
I don't know. Not my area of expertise.
Yes.
Not my area of expertise.
But it's a huge number, right? So
yeah,
I mean, I think that we need to.
I mean, the thing I think you and I are probably most aligned on is actually the operational security, because this is something that ABK Labs, my other company, we're thinking about a lot. We built this product called SVM Kit, which is a suite of tools for automating running Solana, like everything from an entire cluster to like from Genesis block to multi-node, to just like an individual RPC server or validator. And we've made it so that you can just like with a couple commands get those things, like you can launch an entire cluster in 10 minutes. And really what we've done is brought like operational maturity to the ecosystem. This is just something that's kind of been lacking. It's like you're kind of expected as a validator or RPC operator to like go through like hundreds of commands, to get everything running. And it's like, it's a lot. And so that's like the actual operations side of it. But then you talk about the operational security piece, and we've started thinking about, creating a pipeline for secure distros of open source tools and even front ends, right? Even closed source front ends where we can offer that as a service, because we have the expertise. Like my team comes from like old school Linux days. Like we know Red Hat very well. Like we knew some of the people who started Red Hat back in the day. And it's a very Red Hat like business model where we like take your code. It could be open source, like protocols on chain. It could be the validator client itself. We wrap it with our tools and our distro process. And then you can kind of feel, you pay us for that obviously, but you can feel secure that stuff is what it's supposed to be, when it gets distributed to your customers and used. I think we need stuff like that. You need stuff like that. So.
And the good thing here is that, for some of the pure Web3 security stuff, like we have needed to sort of like push the envelope and come up with sort of 0 to 1 solutions. In this case, like we just need to learn or relearn what sort of like the traditional technology industry has that, like ask any.
Yeah. I mean, this is just happens to be like boring Web 2 shit. But it happens to be like people on my team, like my co-founder, Alexander Guy, he's just always the guy who fell on the grenade at every company he's been at to like build the operational tooling and do the security stuff. And so he knows this stuff like the back of his hand. And so we're building, we've had a couple teams asking for it and we're starting to use it, starting to build these things out for various teams, because and really the Bybit hack was like a big wake up call for us. Like I had originally thought about it just for the validator software, like just for the validator clients. And then now I'm like, oh, you need this full stack. Like you need the same distro services for any protocol at the very least. Like maybe not the front ends if they're closed source, but I think you should do it for basically everything. Yeah. And have like a really secure process. But a lot of these teams don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge. It's like they don't run their own RPCs for a reason, right? Like they don't have the skills or the time. And so we can be like a good third party to do it. But yeah, I agree with you.
I really like that. And I also feel that sometimes teams not just don't have the bandwidth, but don't have the skills in-house. This space goes very fast, and you can go from being a 5 people startup to having like a TBL of $500 million in 3 months. So sometimes like just sort of is overwhelming to these teams that were not thinking when they were building their projects that they would have these amounts of volumes and these amounts of TBL and just come sort of like super quick to them. And it's not just bandwidth. It's just that they were not thinking that this would become a that
Yep.
big, that fast, right? And
Yep.
I guess that the other learning, I would love as well your take here is, when the Bybit hack occurred, right? And this was something very interesting because kind of the whole community, even the amount, like was looking at this in real time, is, what happens with the money laundering phase, right? Like we have, what we call the Web3 kill chain, right? So it's the different steps of a hack, right? Like from funding, preparation, execution of the hack, and then the exfiltration phase or money laundering. And just focusing on the fourth step, like imagine right now, North Korea, DPRK, like they have 1.5 billion in ETH. What do they do? What are the next steps to get this to Bitcoin, Monero, Cash, right? And I think something that in the next 3-6 months, a lot of protocols are going to need to kind of ask themselves and choose if they want the blue pill or the red pill. And is that you literally have two options. Either you are sort of like, yeah, we are super censorship resistant, but we risk as well sort of our protocol being used by sort of DPRK and Lazarus to launder, to swap. And this happened, for example, with Thorchain. They got a lot of hit because a lot of sort of the ETH was sort of swapped via Nickel, but also like to Solana, right? Like we saw DPRK bringing ETH to Solana using the bridge, and then this was associated with a meme coin account. So I think like this is a very interesting.
I mean, look, I think they're always going to find a way to launder money, right? Like, and if you like, cash is there's tons of money laundered every year by criminals in cash. It's probably still by far the primary way that people launder money. I think, censorship is a very slippery slope. And if you take the same line of thinking about like, hey, picking the path of censorship, well, you might as well just censor. I mean, you have to turn the internet off. Like you need to just turn the internet off because people use the internet every day to do bad things. And the only way to really stop it is if you cut internet access. And I think that the open internet is a human right. I think everybody has to have access to an open, privacy preserving internet. I think if you look at, I had a show before this called Follow the White Rabbit. It was my first podcast, and it was about the intersection of human rights, privacy, technology, and democracy. And
very cool.
One thing that came up pretty consistently is like law enforcement, has ways of and means to find the bad guys, and the bad guys often make mistakes, right, that get them caught. That even if they're using something like, I don't know, Tornado Cash or like Zcash, right, or Monero, right, like the way they use it causes them to get caught, and they probably don't realize it because human behavior, it's just in our nature to make these kinds of mistakes. And the fact is, like DPRK, Lazarus Group, like they're not going away. They're still going to figure out ways to hack banks and blockchains and everybody else in between to get money. And I think the way to stop them isn't censorship, right? It's something else.
I fully agree with the sort of the sentiment and the macro take, and like we, for example, like it's not that we sell to governments, but sometimes like we work and help law enforcement, like in some investigations as well, right? But I guess for me, the interesting question is at the micro level, in the sense of like you are running let's say like a DEX.
Right, like pump fun, like pump funds turn like blocks. I think that's totally fine. I mean, look, if you're an app running an application, you're a front end for accessing these networks, you can totally choose to, I mean, it's your business, right? Like you can choose to block a IP address or a wallet from interacting with your application. And that happened on Pump. That happened on Pump.Fun with the North Korean thing. And I think that was a really extreme example, but also quite appropriate reaction on their part. I just think once you start getting in like censoring the entire network or the whole, which I associate with the internet, that's where I sort of start drawing a line.
Of course. I totally agree. I just think that like applications, like these sort of smart contract protocols, I'm not saying like one or like the blue pill or red pill are the right choices. I'm just saying that teams are going to need to have this sort of dialogue between themselves. Yeah. Right? Like, what do we do when this, because
I mean,
this is what happened again.
Pump.Fun is is a great example. I'm with the DPRK thing, but also with just some of the content that was being shipped on their site like last year. I mean, it got crazy. Absolutely insane. And stuff that shouldn't be there. Right. So yeah, it's a very, very, again, I said it before, it's a slippery slope. So I think, yeah, for me, where I get kind of put my stopper is like at the like international, national, like government censorship level of things, is where it starts to get, beyond what I'm kind of willing to accept. But well, look, we're at the top of the show. It's been great to have you on. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming.
Yep. Thank you. No, it's been great. And we have like a new project. So I'm going to do a bit the announcement type of thing. So we are incubating a new project in Solana. Looking to make it public probably next month. It's a full open source project. I know that you're a big fan. Yeah, like we do both open source and closed source, depending on the products that we build. And this one is fully open source. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting, very much needed sort of in the Solana ecosystem. And so maybe we need to do this again when this is live. And
let's talk.
Great.
Let's talk in a month.
Yeah, 100%. Was nice.
Awesome. All right.
Take care.